Big story that sort of rolled through yesterday late into the night. Trump's top attorney on Russia, Dowd, out, and Trump's national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, has been fired. He's been replaced. We have a new national security advisor to look forward to this morning. I believe he starts on April 9th, John Bolton. And Andrea Mitchell, describe him in 10 seconds or less.
A bomb thrower, a knife fighter, a bureaucratic infighter, really smart, super hook.
Okay, so we have that to look forward to in terms of the international implications as it pertains to our place in the world and our national security. But what matters to Trump seems to be, from my knowledge of him over the past decade or so, is money and sex. And the lawyer for former porn star Stormy Daniel is turning up the heat on President Trump ahead of his client's highly anticipated 60 Minutes interview. Michael Avenatti is now demanding that the Trump Organization preserve all records related to his client. He says he plans to subpoena them, citing, quote, unmistakable links between Donald Trump's company and a secrecy agreement that she signed is now suing to get nullified. That was followed up by this cryptic tweet, a photo of a disc and a caption implying that he has evidence. Quote, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, how many words is this worth? President Trump denies any and all affairs, including the allegations from former Playboy Playmate Karen McDougal. She claims she had a 10-month affair with Trump, also beginning in 2006. McDougal is currently suing the parent company of the National Enquirer for the rights to her story. She claims she was misled when she entered into contract with American media in the months before the 2016 election. Joining us now, the attorney representing Karen McDougal, Peter Striss. And Attorney Striss, what exactly is your client alleging pertaining to the efforts to keep her silent?
Well, I think I'll start by saying that Karen finally got to tell her story last night with Anderson Cooper.
Right.
And I think, you know, I'll let the American public judge, but in my view, she was authentic, she was credible, and we're just pleased that she was able to do that and that we could accomplish that with the lawsuit. I think there's some confusion as to the point of the lawsuit,
right.
But it's actually quite simple. Karen wants to be able to defend herself in her own words, in her own voice, just like she did last night, without American media essentially using this contract to try and manipulate, threaten, and silence her. And that's effectively what they've done for the better part of a year.
So if the contract, Peter, is still in place, why was Karen able to go on with Anderson Cooper last night and tell that story?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the contract was amended, basically starting with the election. It was formally amended a few weeks later to allow Karen to respond to legitimate media requests. But for the past year, there's been a pattern of behavior, and we have plenty of evidence that we're going to show in court, that American media has essentially said, well, is this a legitimate media request? Are you responding? Frightening her with either financial ruin or other consequences if she did precisely what she did last night, and it's unacceptable.
So when you say she was threatened by American Media Inc.?
Yes, and when I say threatened, I don't mean physically. This is not a Stormy Daniels situation where we have anyone has said they're going to hurt her. I don't want to suggest that in any way.
Threatened in the sense that you're in violation of a contract and there could be punitive damages.
Yeah, the exact words are it's massive, massive financial injury or
and your client has said that Michael Cohen, she believes, was involved. That's the personal attorney for President Trump in the negotiation with American Media Inc. That suggests that someone representing the President of the United States is in the middle of this. Has he been in touch with your client at any point in the last year along the way?
No. The situation is actually pretty simple from our perspective. She thought she was negotiating with a publishing company. Right. And she thought she was doing a legitimate deal. And when they said, we're not going to publish the story, they said, we're not going to publish it because we don't want to damage your reputation. You're our partner. And then she comes to find out that her attorney was having direct discussions with Michael Cohen. I mean, it's deeply troubling. As we enter kind of stormy Sunday, we see this pattern, and Michael Cohen is at the center of all of it.
We saw that cryptic photo posted by Michael Avenatti, the attorney for Stormy Daniels, of a disc, suggesting perhaps there's a photograph. Does your client have physical evidence of a relationship with President Trump, whether it's text messages or photographs or anything else?
So I don't want to answer that, and I want to tell you why. The Karen's truth, I think, as she made very clear last night, is she didn't want to talk about this. She doesn't want to make this about her relationship with Donald Trump. The only reason she came forward is because she needs to be able to defend herself. That's the point of our lawsuit. If people are going to lie and say that she's a gold digger, her story is incredible, she has to be able, in her own words and in her own voice, to be able to respond. And that's what this contract is prohibiting her from doing.
But will she be able to prove in court that she had a physical relationship with President Trump?
Well, the point, I think there is clear evidence, but that's not the point of the lawsuit. The point of the lawsuit is that this contract is the result of fraud, is that this contract is illegal. And if this contract is voided, she doesn't have to prove anything. She can go back to living a private life and respond to suggestions when she sees fit.
John, one more question, and then I'll turn it over to you. Although this was a negotiation, a contract between your client and American Media Inc., does she have reason to believe that any pressure was placed on American Media Inc. by the president or someone representing the president? In other words, does she believe this was a two-person deal or that it involved someone representing Donald Trump?
Well, so the irony of it is that the information that she is getting is the kind of information the American public is getting. She's finding this out from reporting by the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, et cetera. Here's what we know for sure. We know that when she went to AMI, she was brought there by Keith Davidson, a lawyer who now, it's publicly reported, has a close relationship with Michael Cohen.
Right.
We know that AMI immediately went and reported this back to Trump people. Now, they claim it's because they wanted to check and confirm the story. But look, let's be honest here. They say that they didn't run the story because it's not credible. This is the National Enquirer. I mean, they publish stories about people giving birth to aliens, and yet her story wasn't credible. I mean, the public can decide. They saw her last night. I think the truth is going to come out in court.
Some of those stories about giving birth to aliens are pretty compelling. Let's just be honest about that. I want to ask you. I know that you're saying that the substance of the relationship is not the point in some ways, but it is in fact it's relevant in the sense that it goes to the nature of the relationship, and it also goes to what is now a huge political issue that relates to the president's conduct and the kinds of things he's tried to cover up. So there has been reporting on this in the New Yorker and elsewhere about how their relationship came to be. I just want you to talk a little bit about the ways in which she encountered what seems to have been a pretty well worked out system by which the now president of the United States conducted relationships of this kind. She was not alone. She didn't perceive herself to be unique in her relationship. Just talk a little bit about the way in which it seemed to be there was a whole kind of architecture of trying to keep these relationships out of the public eye.
Well, I think there's a few things in that regard that are fairly uncontroversial. So one of them is that she was represented by an attorney, Keith Davidson, who has clear ties to Michael Cohen. And that's important because she had no idea. That wasn't disclosed by him. She thought he was representing her and looking out for her. And, you know, he brought her to ABC. And when she was talking to ABC, there was no money in it. She wasn't going to be paid. She was going to go on like she did last night with Anderson Cooper and tell her story. So she had no reason to believe that there was some sort of three-part collusion between him and people in the Trump administration. She thought that he was advancing her interests, but yet he took her to AMI, and, you know, I think we know where that went.
Does she have anything interesting to say about the role in the relationship she had with President Trump? Does she have anything interesting to say about the role of Keith Schiller?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by interesting. I think she was pretty honest yesterday that Keith Schiller picked her up and took her to Donald Trump, and he didn't do it once, he didn't do it twice, he did it dozens of times. And so, you know, I don't want to put anyone on trial here, but if this becomes kind of a question about who's telling the truth, then I think there's difficult questions to ask about, you know, who's protecting who, and people can judge. You know, they saw her last night. I think I think it's pretty clear that she's authentic.
And we should remind people Keith Schiller is the longtime bodyguard and personal confidant of President Trump. One last question before we let you go.
Why did he leave?
Has anyone from the White House, has anyone from President Trump's camp reached out to her in recent weeks?
Not only is the answer to that no, nobody from American media has reached out. And so I find it ironic that they issue statements and they say that she was always free to talk and that this is a matter of contractual negotiation, when that's not, what they say and how they behave are actually quite different. And that's why we were forced to bring this lawsuit. And at a minimum, at least, we have the light of day. The American public was able to see in her words and in her voice what her experience was.
All right, Peter Striss, attorney for Karen McDougal, who alleges a 10-month relationship with Donald Trump. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Mika?
Yeah, I mean, you look at all of this big picture, the president has relationship issues. Whether it's Vladimir Putin and his inability to have a relationship that's based on honesty and with our national security front and center, whether it's with the people closest to him inside the White House as president of the United States, he can't keep a national security advisor more than a few months. He can't keep a relationship going with the people helping him run this country, who are supposed to be working for the country. He has fired so many people, the list is too long. He obviously, if you believe the allegations that are being put forward here, can't handle women. He has to have lawyers clean up his messes. In doing so, might they have threatened these women? Stormy Daniels, who will be appearing on 60 Minutes this Sunday, claims the president tried to threaten her, and there are claims from her attorney that there is evidence of a lot of different things that went wrong in the relationship. And it's not about the sex here. Karen McDougal, the former Playboy Playmate, says she's being defamed, says she wants the right to the story of her life back. She doesn't want to be called a liar. She doesn't want to be called a gold digger. She wants the rights to her story, and yet there seems to be some sort of deal between President Trump or President Trump's lawyer and the head of a media organization that owns the Enquirer, which I have a little experience with as it pertains to Trump. And I've seen this pattern before. It appears there was a deal to silence her. And that woman now wants the rights to her story back. She wants to speak out. He has a problem with relationships working out. Coming up, from sex scandals to the Russia probe, we'll have the latest shakeup of the president's legal team. Plus, former U.S. Ambassador to Russia Michael McFaul on the president's congratulatory call to Vladimir Putin. Morning Joe is back in a moment.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.